The world of Warhammer 40K is one that is vast in its size, scope, and storytelling, spanning across millenniums with some history being lost to time within the realm of the 40K universe. The multitude of races, various factions, pave the way for a multitude of different stories that can be pinned to a particular point of time, spanning across the various millennia and ever-growing world of the 40K universe. Space Marine, despite not being the first video game to bring the grim dark future to PCs and consoles, would be a starting point for many, and a strong one at that, as it's an adrenaline pumping third-person action experience that's primed to appeal to many of the feelings of its gritty contemporaries of the time that really occupied the Xbox 360 and PS3 era of third-person shooters. But here in 2024, Space Marine and the narrative of Captain Tatius and the 8-hour campaign still offer a solid time and are absolutely worth experiencing if you're looking for something to dive into before the recently released Space Marine 2. And despite that game coming out and really having a ton of new robust features that may look more appealing, this is still one that I, in a lot of ways, would say is definitely worth experiencing. And I would say that the sequel is a direct sequel to this, so it is worth experiencing this one first if you do want to go in and see how the story progresses. And overall, just as an experience, it is a good time. Overall, it is a mostly solid experience, and outside a few performance issues on the PC, there is a pretty good game here that has aged quite well. Without any further delay, I want to get into this video for Warhammer 40K Space Marine. Space Marine's story puts you in the shoes of Tatius, an ultramarine who has been tasked with responding to a distress signal from an invasion on the world Garia, which has been invaded by orcs. The game follows a trail of events which will see Tatius and his squad fighting back the orcs and working to take back the planet from the invasion. There are some twists and turns that unfold later in the game which will see you fighting back the iconic Chaos Marines and trying to stop the game's central antagonist, Namaroth, who is trying to ascend to the status of a demon prince. All Warhammer jargon and all stuff that I did somewhat get the gist of and did feel was relatively digestible within its context. And then as I kind of got more and more into Warhammer stuff, it made more and more sense. But it is something that you can follow if this is your first experience playing with Warhammer and anything in this universe, but there is a bunch of jargon that is very much tailored to this world, and it is a love letter to a lot of people who are big fans and already entrenched in this. But if you are a newcomer jumping into this game, like myself, who is still relatively a novice, there is some stuff here and you will be able to follow a majority of it, but there is some jargon and things that you might need to just get acquainted with and to understand its more broader context. If you're looking to play this in 2025, the ending of Space Marine directly ties into Space Marine 2, which takes a much more cinematic approach and to its focus on storytelling and really does flesh out and go more broader into and expand on that Warhammer lore. That being said, the story for Space Marine here is still entertaining and fun, but the narrative is more a driver in this game that carries us from location to location, providing a MacGuffin to face. And whilst it may entice the more hardcore Warhammer fans, as I imagine there is a lot of lore here to really dissect and get into, and I, as someone, like I mentioned, who is still very new to this universe, I did find it entertaining for the duration of that 8-hour campaign. I do feel like its main driver and engagement is going to be in its set piece moments and overall its engaging and satisfying gameplay, which we'll get into now. I would now like to discuss the gameplay for Space Marine, which has held up incredibly well over the past decade. It in many ways made me feel nostalgic for that Xbox 360 and PS3 era where this game released, because man, this game really does feel like one of those amazing third-person shooters that we would have got back in the day. And yeah, some of them were hit and miss, but I think what makes this one so special is that type of like absolute unit that you feel like and that monster-like energy that you get from this type of experience that I would liken to something like Gears of War with its third-person combat, the way it handles its levels, and even having friendly allies follow you around in combat. Where Space Marine differs is that it isn't reliant on cover-based combat like Gears of War. It has you, the Space Marine, an absolute fucking juggernaut in the front lines, facing off against these enemies, and you have on top of your like ranged weapons, your guns, like you have a chainsaw sword, which I guess is kind of like Gears of War, but you get tons of different weapons. You even get that cool halo on the back of your like armor, like later in the game. It's fantastic. And in this respect, I feel like that taps into this adrenaline pumping action that I would liken to something like God of War. Whilst yes, it isn't a hack and slash game, and I wouldn't say that it copies or embodies many of the same characteristics, the source of adrenaline and drenched in blood action that you get from a God of War game really is something that I feel Space Marine taps into as well, especially when you're hacking through foes. And I guess like it's for like the grimdark fantasy game where the future is only war. I guess it is good that the most comparable two games that I can think of are ones that have the of war in the title, but it does make sense given the fact that Relic Entertainment, the developer of Space Marine, hired staff who worked on both of the series that I've mentioned. One thing that I loved about Space Marine is the level of variety that this game offers with a plethora of weapons, and it allows you to switch between 4 weapons at a time, which is great. But it isn't just the weapons that it allows you to tap into this power fantasy of being an ultramarine. It's the great wealth of tools that come with being an ultramarine, like the jetpack, which is accessible in certain segments of the game, making you feel like that absolute unit that I keep talking about, where you can hover around and just saw down crushing enemies, you know, just doing a ground pound, and anything that comes between you and your feet is going to be smashed between the floor. It sounds like it's incredible, and man, it is. I know it's been 10 plus years and we've got Space Marine 2, but Space Marine 1 in this regard and that power fantasy still holds up incredibly well. It's unreal, and even with the amount of minimal knowledge that I have of the 40K universe, there's tons of neat little references and tools that are put to use that are fit for the role of the Ultramarine, like you get the protective iron halo attachment, and I mean, it's awesome. It's like there's so much cool stuff in this game, and if you adore this series, then there is tons here to really just play through. And I think the gameplay, whilst it is a familiar third-person shooter, it hits all the right notes that you would want from this genre and that you would want from your 40K game. I would like to touch on the performance for Space Marine, because honestly, this is my biggest grievance that I had with the game, and I had some issues really getting this original Space Marine to run. And I think overall, like, the original package of this game is so fantastic that I think that this issue that came, particularly with the Anniversary Edition, it is just like baffling to me, because it really is difficult to get running on modern PCs with continuous crashes before I could even get to the main menu. I was able to eventually get this game running through finding a DLL file through a GitHub like repo, and I was able to get this game running and download that and put it in the right location. All that stuff was good. But even when I played the game and after an hour of playtime, I would still get crashes, and seriously, for a game that only runs about 8 hours, I experienced 4 different crashes. That's on top of spending like 20 minutes to half an hour trying to get this game to run in the first place. And if you are someone who's wanting to play this game and like experience it for the first time, and you don't want, like, you want minimum hassle and you're not willing to just like sit there and fiddle around to get this game set up, then I would be really cautious before committing to purchasing this game and picking it up on PC. If you have a 360 or a PS3, it probably is the like easier option with like less hassle and a more clear guarantee that it would run. But the game itself, however, once you're able to get it functioning and running, as I've mentioned before, it has like, it's incredible and it's fun, and it has a steady frame rate. There's no major bugs, soft locks, or issues in that regard with the game itself. Like, there's no in-game issues or bugs or like optimization issues. It's just getting the game to actually boot in the first place and having it not crash, which I think is also tied to the similar type of issues that I was experiencing with getting it to boot. Overall though, outside of some performance issues, I do think that Space Marine is a great and worthwhile experience. It's just, this is something to be cautious of before committing to it on the PC. Space Marine, when it released, was met with mixed reception on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox 360, generally receiving the more favorable reviews. The game was praised for its gore and how well balanced its hack and slash and shooter combat came together, and it was like PB&J. It worked really well, and it still holds up to this day. What's crazy to me is that this game was originally planned to be a trilogy, with 2 sequels that were planned to come out after the release of the original Space Marine. But unfortunately, with the closure of THQ, these 2 future sequels would never see the light of day. But that doesn't mean that the series would never see a continuation. As you've probably heard or seen in the recent months that have just passed, there was a sequel to Space Marine, developed by Saber Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment. And the future of this series is looking like it is in good health and good hands. But that topic is for another video, which is also in the works. But the legacy of Space Marine leaves behind one big thing for the Warhammer 40K games, and that was that it was able to release at a time when there wasn't as many games really exploring this expansive universe. Sure, you did have those Dawn of War games, which were huge. You also had the Fire Warrior game, which was a bit more middling, and there was a few other ones that came out here and there. But with the advent of Space Marine, this was a game that I think had a very approachable and accessible gameplay model that was really easy for a lot of people to get into, especially on consoles like the 360, where you had an alternative like Gears and you felt right at home jumping into this new expansive universe, which would slowly have many different avenues for you to get invested in this world's lore. And trust me, there is tons of books, tons of history with this game and this universe that you can just get into so much here. It's insane. And as someone who's been this year really dabbling with 40k, it is overwhelming just how much content there is, and I think this game does a great job really easing you into that universe. It is a 40k game that was able to be looked back upon fondly by many who played it, and that is in large part why many yearned for a sequel and cheered when its eventual arrival and revival came late last year. I'm sure much like its successor, many Warhammer fans were born from experiencing this video game, and I can see why, and I'm eager and excited to really talk about my feelings towards the sequel just as much as I've explored the original Space Marine here today. To bring this video to a close, Warhammer 40k Space Marine was a great experience that has aged really well as a video game. But as a PC game, well, that's a different question, and it may be hard to get running and hard to recommend for that very reason alone. But once you overcome that hurdle, and if you are able to get this game just running flawlessly without any issues, you will be in for a damn good action adventure that is jam-packed full of gore, the action and violence that the futuristic grimdark universe calls for. There is a wealth of weapons and tools that tap into the power fantasy of being an ultramarine and harken back to the third-person action shooters of the 2010s. And if you are looking for a game to throw you back to that time period and those types of games that we were getting, then Space Marine really is a great encapsulation of that. And it also is killing two birds with one stone if you are looking to get into the 40k series, because this is a great entry point to really just get familiar with some of this universe and just hop in. It's definitely not like overbearing with its lore and storytelling, and it is a nice way to really just get some Warhammer. And if you're wondering, should I just skip this and just go straight to Space Marine 2? I mean, it looks more slick and polished and modern. Well, yes, those things, whilst correct, I would still argue that Space Marine 1 has a certain charm, and it is the origin point of this now confirmed trilogy, and I do think that it's worth playing. I think it still holds up as a great video game, and it is fun to play. It is old and dated in some respects to its design, and it's a product of its time, but overall I do think that it has aged incredibly well for the most part. Its gunplay, its mechanics, and the way that you can just play through this 8-hour campaign, and overall its level design and enemies, it's all fun, and it will never really run out of steam for the duration that the campaign goes for, which is roughly 8 hours. So TLDR basically is Space Marine has held up incredibly well. Its biggest flaw is its performance, but if you are able to overcome that hurdle, you are in for a great time, and one that 10 plus years later I would still recommend checking out. Thanks for watching. As always, be sure to leave a thumbs up or thumbs down if you did like or didn't like the video, and on top of that, leave us a comment as well. Let us know what you think about Space Marine, how much you enjoyed it or didn't enjoy it, and if you enjoyed this video. And either way, let us know how you're feeling. And on top of that, I'm going to be working on a new video for Space Marine 2, as well as some other games that came out earlier in this year that I've been playing and making my way through, and some new games that'll be coming out soon. So I'm going to be trying to get a lot more videos out. I've been working on a few, and thank you for watching this one. And as always, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace out.